Hi, my name is Gurmeet Manku, and this video is about obesity rates among Asian Indians. Now, this is kind of a morbid topic, but we need to talk about it for awareness. Okay, so we will discuss four populations. So one is world as a whole, what is happening in the world, what is happening in USA in terms of obesity, what's happening in India, and then Asian Indians are people of Indian origin who are in USA. Now, why do we use the qualifier Asian? It happens that we have native Indians also in USA. To distinguish between these two populations, we have native Indians and Asian Indians. Okay, so obesity was declared a disease in a landmark publication by WHO in 1997, and the criteria was defined as BMI more than 30. So BMI is this somewhat complicated formula, but the big picture is that for an individual, the height is relatively constant across the adult's lifetime. So for my height, as my weight goes up, BMI follows it linearly. So my weight increases by 10%, BMI goes up by 10%. Okay, it's like that. So the WHO criteria is for the world as a whole, right? But the world is composed of a lot of different regions. So is there a provision for region-specific guidelines? Turns out, yes. So Indian scientists have responded with India-specific guidelines in, for example, a paper like this, consensus statement by a team of researchers and doctors. And the criteria is BMI more than 25. Okay, there's a big difference between BMI 30 and BMI 25 as the criteria for obesity. And that is kind of the main point of the video. Now, why have the Indian scientists defined it like this? I have a different video in which I go through some details. The big picture is that Indian populations get metabolic conditions like diabetes at lower BMIs. Okay, I'll skip the details. And the main point of the current video is that if we use the WHO criteria of BMI more than 30 for Asian Indians, okay, then my estimate is about 10% of the population is obese. But if we use the criteria BMI more than 25, this number becomes 50% or so. Okay, these are estimates. I'll walk us through it. Okay, that's the main point of the video. Okay, let's look at the world as a whole. So I came across this cute term called Globesity because the entire globe is facing an obesity epidemic. And this is from a research paper. Okay, and obesity is, associated with many conditions like heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, just to name a few. So this is interesting. This lower two lines are for the world as a whole, men and women. And you can see from 1975 till 2015, the BMI on an average increased from 20 to around, we are hitting around 24.5 or so, right? Approximately a 10% increase over like a 40-year time frame. USA, these two lines are US, men and women. It used to be 24, it has now become 29 or so. Okay, so USA in some sense is ahead of the curve. But you can also see it this way. In a 40-year time period, 40 or 45 years, from 75, the world is reaching where US was about 40 years ago. We can kind of see it like that. So kind of the world is lagging by 45 years. Okay, it's catching up with US curves. Okay. Projections for 2035, some more, unhappy statistics. An expected quarter of the world is expected to become BMI more than 30. And if you use 25 as the threshold, 51% of the entire world will cross this threshold. That's the expectation, that's the estimate. Okay, let's look at obesity in USA. So in this chart, this is based on a CDC video. CDC is Center for Disease Control. It's an important organization in USA and they collect all these statistics. So you see in 1985, we had a few states where obesity rates were 10 or you can say 14% or so. But every 5 years, obesity rates keep going up. By 2010, so many states had obesity crossing 30%. And now if we fast forward to 2016, then you see some states have crossed 35%. And 1 in 3 adults in USA is obese. Okay, and it seems to be growing. For example, the projections for 2030 are it's expected to grow to 1 in 2. Almost half the population is expected to become obese, and 1 in 4, which is half of the obese people, are expected to become severely obese. Okay, so here is one more projection. This is by World Obesity Federation, and they are saying that this is men and women. Almost 60% of men and women by 2035 are expected to be obese, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. Maybe it will become 70 or 80. I have no idea. But these are the current estimates I could find. Okay, now let's look at India and Asian Indians also. So obesity in India. So this is an article from BBC. So we have Government of India surveys like NFHS 4 and 5. So the recent one was 2021. And on the basis of this survey, how many people have crossed this threshold of BMI more than 25? This is the threshold set by Indian scientists for obesity. So almost 23-24% of men and women in India have crossed this threshold. Okay. Now, projections are 40% of men and women will have crossed this threshold by 2040. Okay. And if you look at it on a state-by-state basis, this is India in 1990. This is like 26 years later. In 1990, a few states had about 9 to 14% of population in exceeding this threshold, BMI over 25. But if you look at 2016, many states, they're all in red here, right? They have crossed almost 30%. People have crossed this threshold. Okay, so we can look at a few more interesting statistics. So let's see what the trends are. Okay, so as I shared with you, 23-24% of men and women, as per the Government of India survey, have crossed this threshold. But we have some trends like, rural lower obesity rates, urban higher obesity rates. Okay, if you look at age, as we get older and older, let's say we are in 40s, then 32 or 37% of population has crossed this threshold, BMI 25. And this is even more interesting in my view. These are wealth quintiles. So if we divide the whole population by wealth and we look at 5 groups from, you can say, the lowest wealth to the highest wealth, the top 20%, the obesity rates, people who have crossed this threshold are 37 to 39%. Okay. So once again, this is the criteria for obesity defined by Indian scientists. Okay. Okay, so we can look at several states, for example. These are North Indian states, and I can see numbers like 30, even 40, 44. These are central states, eastern states. So some states have like 12, 13, 14%, and some states have 30, 40%. Okay, there's a variation going on. Even though the average is 22, 23, there's a variation. And these are southern states, again 30s and 40s, and a few states are in like 12, 13, 14. Okay. So now we are ready for Asian Indians. Okay, who are the Asian Indians? People who originally are from India and are in USA at this point of time are the Asian Indians. So before I look at that data, I want to point out a trend which I have noticed. Okay, the trend, as I have come to understand, is that migrations have happened in the last 100 years or so, right? Or sometimes, the same area has changed. But let's look at migrations. So migrations could happen due to many reasons, but a common reason for migration is seeking better resources, better jobs, a better life for us and our loved ones. So migrations happen from, for example, villages to small city to bigger cities for better opportunities. And sometimes across the world, we try to go to better opportunities across the world. Okay, so migration studies kind of show that BMI increases as we move. Okay, how are these studies done? So this is like a sibling study. So one sibling stayed in a rural area, but the other sibling moved to one of these places called Lucknow, Nagpur, Hyderabad, Bangalore. They studied quite a few people. It's a few thousand. And kind of the big picture is, your BMI went up from 22 to 24, depending upon how long we had spent our life in urban areas. Okay, this is that kind of data. So again, men and women both, it's like a 2-point increase in BMI. So similar studies were done for immigrants. Okay, so this is a study in UK. So they found some people in West London, and then they found their siblings in Punjab. So the average age is approximately the same, but this noticed a 4-point difference. So 23 BMI became 27, and the average age is around 45, so mid 40s, right? So this is like a 4-point increase. And a similar study was repeated. People in Sandwell in UK were identified for the study, and then all of them were from a Navsari region in Gujarat, and so matching individuals were found in Navsari, and they compared them, and again I think it's like a 5-point increase or a 4-point increase is going on. Okay, so what is going on is, as I understand, if you remember the slides I showed you, right, there is an increase between rural and urban rates of people crossing that threshold. We become bigger and bigger. There is also a trend that as we get richer, right, within India, in wealth quantiles, richer people are crossing that threshold, and across these migrations, people are crossing that threshold. So this is the picture that is emerging in my mind. Okay, what is going on? Okay, so now comes obesity among Asian Indians, which was the theme of this video. So I could not find accurate data for 2022 or recent years, but I could find something from 20 years ago, from 2004-2006 timeframe. So this is at US Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Minority Health. So they cite, they have this article here, there are links here. So the number of people in this range, 25 to 30, was 34%, and people who had crossed BMI 30 were 6%. So if you sum these two, it becomes 40%. So 40% of population 20 years ago among the Asian Indians had crossed this threshold of BMI 25. Now, what is happening since then? My understanding is this curve is going up. I'll give you a little bit of evidence that I could find. So here is a study from 2018. So their methodology was they chose around 1,000 adults from 7 cities. These are big cities in USA. And among the sample that they found, 49%, like almost 50%, had crossed this threshold, right? And another 25% were in this range. So these are the two thresholds. So this is the criteria for obesity by Indian scientists. Okay, so I found one more study. So actually, if we look at the baseline data for this study, we can figure out, we can estimate the number that I'm looking for, which is by 2022, how many people among Asian Indians had crossed this threshold. But I haven't had the time to look into the base data and figure this out. But I'll share something else with you. So they do have BMI more than 30. They estimated that number, and that is around 11% or so, okay, among the Asian Indians in this study. So the reason I'm highlighting that 11% is that if we go back, in 20 years ago, it used to be 6%. So this 6 has increased to 11, and I'm just guessing this number must have increased to 40 or so. So I'm guessing, I think by 2022 or so, it's probably 50% have crossed this threshold, maybe 55 or so, maybe 60. I don't know the actual number, but it seems to be around 50. Okay, so here's the last section of this presentation. So this is a concern I have, which is, as I showed you, as we get older, as we migrate from rural to urban, and it looks like also from Indian cities to UK, and I think the same thing holds for USA migrations from India. And as we get richer, right, we seem to become more obese. So now imagine somebody in their 40s who is in this highest wealth bucket. Our siblings and people that we meet at our workplace and the place that we stay, we typically buy a house next to people who have similar lifestyle and similar wealth quintiles. So kind of we might get used to seeing people who have high BMI, and we might start thinking it is normal. Okay, that's what I'm calling normalization of obesity. And I hope that is not happening. I want to share a personal story with you. So way back in 1995 or so, okay, I started putting on weight. I came to US. I was in UC Berkeley, and I was in International House, and they had a buffet style food. And I used to be skinny in those days. At the back of my mind, I wanted to become bigger for some reason. And till date, I wonder what was my motivation. Okay, but I had this at the back of my mind. I want to put on weight. Okay, so I did put on weight. It was not a conscious effort. I did put on weight. And at some point of time, I had a belly for the first time in my life. And my friends noticed. They said, looks like you're putting on weight. You have a belly. I remember taking my right hand, putting it on my tummy and saying, yeah, it's a sign of prosperity. I was happily saying that. I distinctly remember saying this. So why was I saying that, and what was playing in my mind? Okay. So in India, we have a phrase like this, right? Khate pite ghar ke lagte ho, which in English means, looks like you're from a well-nourished family. I think what was playing in my mind was that India has a lot of poverty. It still has poverty. So I grew up in India in 70s and 80s and 90s. And I used to hear stories. A lot of people don't have food to eat. They can't have even 2 meals in the whole day. So somebody who has this look of being plump, okay, it is a visual indicator that, oh, these people have kind of made it, that they have enough food to eat. Okay, so it was kind of a desirable look. That was, wow, indicator of prosperity. So now that I have gotten older, I have come to understand that that look of being overweight is not exactly a desirable look. We should really be normal weight. If we are gaining weight, it should really be muscle mass. Now, I don't have any muscles. I haven't done physical fitness, but if I want to gain weight, it should really be through fitness and muscles. Okay. Okay. I just thought I'll share these personal sentiments with you, and I hope we are not normalizing being overweight and obesity. Okay. I'm collecting articles at Thankful to Plants. And if you like these videos, please like them, subscribe them, and share them. Thank you so much.